Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at the impact of climate change on children, specifically using this pretty fascinating report from UNICEF. Our mission for this deep dive is to really understand how the climate crisis is also a child rights crisis.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the environmental impacts, the melting ice caps, rising sea levels, but it's really important that we start thinking about this in terms of human cost, and particularly the impact on the younger generation.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that the other day. We hear all these things in the news, melting ice caps, rising sea levels, but I hadn't really thought about what it actually means for children growing up today.
And this report really highlights that. It brings up this pretty shocking statistic that every single child on Earth is already exposed to at least one climate hazard.
Wow.
Whether that's extreme heat, air pollution, water scarcity.
Every single child.
Every single child.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. I remember reading about those heat waves in Europe last summer and just thinking, I mean, as an adult, I was struggling with that. It must be so much harder for kids to cope with those kinds of extreme temperatures.
Absolutely. Children are uniquely vulnerable because their bodies and minds are still developing. They're just more susceptible to things like heat stress, respiratory illnesses from air pollution, the waterborne diseases, and all of these are just intensified by climate change.
And it's not even just the physical impacts, right? I mean, what about the emotional toll on a child who experiences a wildfire, a devastating flood, something that destroys their home, their community?
Yeah, absolutely. Children are so deeply affected by the trauma and the displacement caused by climate-related disasters. I mean, the report states that 1 billion children face extreme risks to their survival and well-being due to climate change.
1 billion children.
Oh, that's
just such a staggering number. I mean, it's really clear that we need to move beyond awareness and really move into action.
Absolutely. And I think that's really where UNICEF's call to action comes in. They've outlined this three-pronged approach: protect, empower, reduce.
Okay. Protect, empower, reduce. Let's unpack that a little bit. What does protect? What does that actually entail?
So protect is really focusing on adapting those essential services, like healthcare and education, to withstand the impacts of climate change. So it's things like making sure that hospitals have backup power during extreme weather events, designing schools that can withstand floods, strengthening early warning systems to prepare communities for disasters.
So it's really about building that resilience into the systems that children rely on.
Precisely. And then there's empower, which is really about equipping children with the knowledge and skills they need to become climate champions themselves.
So it's talking climate education in schools. Fostering critical thinking about these issues, and also empowering them to speak up about their concerns.
Absolutely. Giving them the tools
to
be advocates for change and be part of the solution. And then finally, there's reduce.
Okay, so that's going to be the big one. Reducing those greenhouse gas emissions to mitigate the worst effects of climate change.
Exactly. This requires a global effort. We're talking about transitioning to renewable energy sources, investing in sustainable agriculture, promoting energy efficiency, protecting our forests.
This sounds like a pretty monumental task. But what's encouraging to me is that UNICEF isn't just issuing reports. They're actually on the ground working with communities and governments to implement these solutions.
Exactly. They're working to provide safe drinking water in drought-stricken areas. They're supporting the development of climate-resilient schools. They're training healthcare workers to address the health impacts of climate change. So they're really walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
And I think it's so important that they're also amplifying children's voices throughout this whole process.
Yeah. There's this really powerful story in the report about a young girl named Maya from a small island nation in the Pacific, and her home is literally disappearing beneath rising sea levels. But instead of giving up, she's become this really passionate advocate for climate action, speaking at international conferences, demanding that world leaders actually listen to the voices of young people.
That's incredibly inspiring. I mean, she's facing the direct consequences, but she's not letting it silence her.
Exactly. And that's exactly what UNICEF is trying to do. Give young people like Maya a platform to be heard, to influence the decisions that will shape their future.
Her story really highlights how climate change isn't just an environmental problem. It's a human rights issue.
It's so deeply intertwined with issues like poverty, inequality, access to basic resources. Climate change just exacerbates these existing inequalities and puts the most vulnerable children at even greater risk.
This is all such important information to set the stage for our conversation about what we can actually do to address this really complex challenge. And that's exactly what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive. We've been talking about this really profound impact of climate change on children. And I gotta say, it's a lot to process. It's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed by the scale of the problem.
Yeah, I understand that feeling. It's natural to feel that sense of urgency, maybe even a little bit of helplessness when we're confronted with such a complex global challenge.
Yeah. So where do we even begin? What can we do as individuals to actually make a difference in the face of this crisis?
Well, the good news is that there are concrete actions we can take, both individually and collectively, to start addressing this challenge.
Okay. That's reassuring. So let's talk about those. What are some of the most impactful things we can do?
Well, I think first and foremost, education is key. We need to really deepen our understanding of climate change, the causes, the consequences, particularly for children.
That makes sense. Knowledge is power, right? The more we know, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions and take meaningful action.
Absolutely. And the UNICEF report actually provides a wealth of information and resources on this topic. They have a whole section on their website dedicated to climate change in children.
So start by learning more, diving into the research, understanding the science behind it, exploring the solutions that are being proposed.
Exactly. And once you have that solid grasp of the issue, share that knowledge. Talk to your family, their friends, colleagues, your community members about it.
I think that's such a crucial point. Sometimes it feels like climate change is this taboo topic that people avoid discussing.
It can be a challenging conversation, for sure. But the more we talk about it openly and honestly, the more we can break down those barriers and start working together to find solutions.
It's not just about sharing information, right? It's also about inspiring action.
Absolutely. Encourage others to learn more, to make changes in their own lives, to advocate for systemic change.
So, speaking of action, what are some tangible things people can do in their daily lives to make a difference?
There's a lot we can do. We can reduce our own carbon footprint by making conscious choices about transportation.
Energy consumption and our diet.
So things like driving less, using public transportation or biking, opting for energy-efficient appliances, reducing our consumption of meat and dairy products.
Exactly. Those are all great examples.
Yeah.
We can also make a difference by supporting businesses and organizations that are committed to sustainability and climate action.
And let's not forget about the power of political action.
That's so crucial. Contact your elected officials. Let them know that climate change is a priority for you. Vote for candidates who have strong plans to address climate change.
It's about making our voices heard and holding our leaders accountable for taking bold action.
Absolutely. And, supporting organizations like UNICEF that are working on the front lines of this crisis is another powerful way to make a difference.
I mean, they're not just advocating for policy changes, they're actually implementing solutions on the ground. Yeah. They're providing clean water and sanitation facilities in vulnerable communities, supporting the development of climate-resilient infrastructure, helping children cope with the emotional trauma of climate-related disasters.
So donating to UNICEF, volunteering our time, or just spreading awareness about their work can have a real impact.
Absolutely. Every action we take, no matter how small it may seem, contributes to this collective effort to protect children from the impacts of climate change. It's about shifting our mindset from what can I do to what can we do together.
I love that. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that collective action is the key to creating a more sustainable and just future for all children.
And I think that brings us to a really important question. What does that future look like? What kind of world do we want to create for children in a climate change reality?
That's a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore that very question. We've spent this deep dive exploring some pretty heavy stuff, the stark realities of climate change and its impact on children. But, I don't want to leave our listeners feeling overwhelmed or hopeless.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's easy to get kind of bogged down in the challenges, but it's crucial to remember that we also have the power to shape a different future.
So let's shift gears a little bit. Instead of dwelling on the problems, let's envision a future where children can not only survive, but thrive in a climate-changed world.
I like that. Let's paint a picture of that world. What does it look like to you?
Well, I imagine a world where every child has access to safe, clean drinking water, regardless of drought or flooding. A world where they can breathe clean air, free from harmful pollutants that are made worse by climate change.
Yeah, and where their communities are resilient and prepared to withstand those impacts. of climate-related disasters, where homes and schools are built to withstand extreme weather, and early warning systems are in place to protect people from harm.
And what about education? What role does that play in this future we're envisioning?
Education is absolutely essential. In this future, children are learning about climate change from a young age. They're developing critical thinking skills to analyze these issues, and they're empowered to be part of the solutions.
So it's not just about memorizing facts. It's about fostering a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of our planet and giving them the tools to be change makers.
Precisely. They're learning about renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, green technologies. They're experimenting with solutions in their own communities, becoming advocates for change, inspiring others to take action.
I imagine in this future, children's voices are valued and amplified. They're not just seen as passive recipients of adult decisions, but as active participants in shaping the future that they're going to inherit.
Absolutely. Their ideas, their perspectives, their solutions are integrated into decision-making processes at all levels, from local communities to global forums.
This future we're describing, it's a world that prioritizes sustainability, equity, the well-being of all people, particularly the most vulnerable.
It's a world where we've moved beyond short-term thinking and embraced a long-term vision of a just and thriving planet for generations to come.
It's a bold vision,
Yeah.
but I truly believe it's within our reach. We have the knowledge, the technology, the resources to create this future.
What we need now is that collective will to act, the courage to challenge the status quo, and the commitment to put the well-being of children above all else.
It's about recognizing that the choices we make today will have a profound impact on the lives of children for decades to come.
Ultimately, it's about remembering that we're not just fighting for a healthy planet, we're fighting for the future of humanity.
Well, this deep dive has been a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of our world and the urgent need for action. But it's also given me a sense of hope, knowing that there's so many people out there, including young people, who are dedicated to creating a better future.
I share that hope, and I believe that by working together, we can create a world where every child has the opportunity to thrive.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's inspired you to learn more, to take action, and to be part of the solution.